Sup dudes, I'm 37 here, and welcome back to another Java tutorial. Apparently this had tutorial spelled wrong, so it's over here. Anyway, other than that sort of weirdness happening, I type these fast, so that's to be expected, Tibbet. I'm not doing spelling lessons, so tutorial 14. Today, we're talking about enums. If you have no idea what that means, great. This is what this tutorial is for, to explain what that means. An enum is a special type of object. So we're going to go in here, we're going to go to new, and as you can see, we got a few things. We got the interface, because that's what we were discussing last time. Empty file and JSON files are just stuff that's messing me around with some stuff. But it's not in here, so what we want to go to is other. And now we want to click on Java, and we got a few options. There's Java class, interface, enum, annotation type, exception, package info, applet, main class, singleton class, empty Java file, and Java package. Java package, you already know what that is. You already know what the main class is. You already know what an interface and a class are. The ones that I'm pretty sure I'll be looking at is enums and exceptions. So, yeah. But we're looking at enums. Exceptions, I'm pretty sure I'm going to look at some point in the future. So, enums. We're going to create an enum. And enums, this is another habit I picked up from Minecraft modding. I like to prefix the name of an enum with enum. So let's say enum. What's a good one? I guess maybe enum. I'm trying to think of a good enum example because there's actually some good enum examples. Now, the idea behind an enum before we actually create an enum is it's an enumerated type. Now, what this means is that it's an object, but you can't create new objects of this type. The only objects of this type that you can access are what's defined by the code within the enum class. It's predefined, you cannot change it. They are constant. And you can't make new ones. All right? So a good example of what you do this with is, say, a gender. You don't want people, you have male, female, and plus some other ones which I can't remember right now because I don't even know. But you can't make a gender called purple. Actually, there's probably someone who actually, now that I've made that comment, there's probably actually someone who wants to self-identify themselves as a purple. Whatever. None of my business. But we can do, say you were trying to make a game that was supposed to work differently. It's supposed to be a console game. It works differently on different consoles. You do an console type. Now that's what we're going to do because that's something a bit that actually would be a bit complex. So we're just going to do, what's a good one to do? Enum weapon type. You'd be coding a game. This thing, and it's like different types of weapons. You got like sword or bow, or you got like melee or ranged. Those would be the only two types. Yeah, this is a terrible example. I just realized. Let's delete this file. Say to delete with usage search. You don't need to do that. We haven't used it. So Java enum. Let's make an actually good one. Say enum. I don't know. Anyone got a good one that I can use? My brain is not working right now. Ooh, this is a good one. Nope, that just left my brain. Oh boy. Anyway, normally when coding a game, and I've actually got good ideas for enums. I don't know. Come on, this shouldn't be that hard. I can normally figure this out. Anyway, let's try a enum of like colors. And if you're wondering why I spell it that way, because I'm Canadian. Welcome to Canada. So it's like you got colors. It's like these are the colors you want. I guess we could specify what these colors are for. So like enum team colors. It's like these are like the colors of like the different teams you got. It's like a multiplayer game and you got multiple teams. Okay, makes sense. So let's go through what we want. Let's see. Well, here are some ones that pretty much you always have in whatever game you're playing. You got blue. Now, this is how you declare enums. And these should normally be capitalized. You got blue, you put a comma, and then you have another one. Red, say, you put a comma, and then you have another one. Yellow, and you put a comma, and then another one. Green, comma, and then another one. And keep going. Let's try, say, orange. I pity whoever ends up on orange team. Orange is this really bright and painful to look at color sometimes. Anyway, black maybe. White. Let's see, how many different teams do we want? We got 8 right now. Let's stop at 10. Brown. And let's try gold. There we go. Those are good colors. Actually, no, not brown. Let's go silver. Got silver, gold. There we go. These are good ones. Now, this is all good, but they contain no information. These are good for containing information, so you can just pass this one thing along, and it gives a whole pile of properties. For example, the name of their team. So we do public enum team color, and this is basically a constructor. Now, right now modifier public not allowed here, believe it or not. This literally has to be private. I believe you can use protected, but private is, and the reason for this is why would it be public? You can't initialize any more of them, is the whole idea behind them. These are the set values. These are the only values it can be. So we can do a numerical ID. We can do int ID, string name. Let's try another property. If you were doing GUI stuff, you could pass on a color argument, because color objects are actually something that exists with the GUI packages in Java, but that's far off into the future, so I guess maybe we could like look up like RGB values for this. So int R, int G, int B, or we could take all this, and we could go in here, we could do new Java class, and we could do color, and we could give this the RGB arguments in here. For example, let's private final int RGB, and let's get the constructor public color int R, int G, int B. And yes, those all have to have their int all at the same time. So this dot R equals R, this dot G equals G. Yes, you literally have to type this out. And this dot B equals B. All right. This, by the way, is, and then we're just going to do the public int get R, return R, public int get G, return G, and public int get B. Boom. And return B. Naturally. So rather than having these in here, we could have just a color argument. Color, which spelled with a U because I'm Canadian. I'm used to having to work with the American spelling because of modding for Minecraft, where they use the American spelling in color. So I might slip up and use the American spelling sometimes, but most of the time you'll see me with the Canadian spelling. Now this is providing me with an error, this thing. The reason is because these guys don't do the arguments, and this is actually pretty simple. You just put the brackets after this, and you put in an ID, you can range them from 0 to the maximum. We're going to put blue, and we're going to put a color. So I'm actually going to open up my web page and we're going to do blue. We're going to look up blue RGB. Get a good one. Get a good color of blue. I don't know. Uh, what's a good one to get? Images. So this is just going to give me a bunch of RGBs for different types of blue, apparently. 255 is all blue. 00255 is pretty much only blue. So yeah, let's do that. New color 00255. And now that works, but the rest of them will still be giving us errors because they don't do this constructor. This is the only constructor available. There's no longer a default constructor because we've made a constructor. It doesn't allow for a default constructor. So we're going to call this one red, and it's going to have new color, and it's going to be 25500, naturally. Yellow. Green would be easy, but yellow. How do we get a good yellow one? That's presenting me with something here. That's a yellow, apparently. Let's type in yellow here, see if we can get other good yellows. Holy cow, that's a bright yellow. Okay. I can't see some of those on there, but I should put it in black so I can actually see what I'm looking at. Okay. I suppose I could just open up like Adobe Illustrator, which has like all these colors in them with their color codes. Honestly, why am I looking? This is also partially a tutorial on how RGB works. Like, seriously. This really is. Okay. I think I have to have a new thing open to actually look at them. But anyway, RGB yellow. What is its RGB code though? So can I? Oh wow. So it's 255, 255, 0. Okay. That's good enough. 2. And then yellow. And then new color. And then 255, 255, 0. And green. Just put a 255, 0, 255, 0 for this one. That's an easy one. So green. New color 0, 255. Oh, cow, I accidentally put in too many 5s there. Okay. Let's just open this one up and let's... That looks pretty gold, so and that looks pretty orange. So let's go with this guy. 241, 90, 36, apparently. All right. 4. Orange. New color. 241, 90, 36. I don't want to just put inaccurate numbers in here. I'm a bit weird about that. Let's find a good purple. That's magenta. That looks pretty purple. Actually, this is funny. What does this show? Yeah, it shows the 255 type thing going on. This art, yep. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. That's what happens when you turn the green and blue all the way to max. You get a cyan-like color. But anyway, this is a purple. 102, 45, 145. 102, 102, 45, 145. Okay, so we put them in here. Why do I keep forgetting what I'm looking at? 102, 45, 145. Okay. Do not forget it this time. All right, and we still got to get a black, which I believe, if I'm correct, is literally 0, 0, 0. That's one that I'm pretty sure most people will get. It's 0, 0, 0, new color. And this one's just 0, 0, 0. White, of course, is the inverse is 255, 255, 255. In case you didn't know, that's just pure white. New color, 255, 255, 255. If you were doing GUI stuff, you could actually figure out how this worked. Okay, a silver, I think a good gray color would work. Like a good shiny gray color. I think this best works. 204, 204, triple 204. Okay. Wait. Oh, I accidentally counted the 4 twice. My bad. Silver. So it was 204, 204, 204. Yep. New color. 204, 204, 204. And lastly, gold. Let's look for a good gold. I said this was a pretty good gold. 251, 176, 59. Not going to remember that, like usual. Anyway, this can be 9. We're going to call this gold. New color. And like I said, I wasn't going to remember that. 251, 176, 59. All right, 251, 176, 59. I believe that's correct. That is correct. Okay, let's exit this. I don't care about that. And apparently now you're looking at recording software. Anyway, this is all great, except these aren't really storing anything. So what you want to do, private final int, not in our, ID, private final, that just happened. I just pressed, I think, the control and shift at the same time. Stuff like that happens. String, name, and private final color. And of course, in the constructor, you set these values to the arguments, like this. And this dot color equals color. And of course, now these are all private, so we're going to do some get things. And you can also do some fun things to mess with this. Okay, so let's do public int get ID. Now this is just a numerical ID that represents it. It's really not useful. And the name helps you get a name. And also, it's like, I suppose you can do like, there's gonna be something later I could teach you. It's like the team, they get their color, but they can also decide on like a special name. You can do something coding related with that, I suppose, right? And then we got our public int get name, and that should not be int. Why did I type int? String, not int. Anyway, return name, and of course, without a random 8 in there, public color get color, return color. Literally, I've said color like 15 times in this. Hey, so the idea is like you apply this to a team. Now, there are some interesting things, and yes, I forgot to rename this to main. I'm going to do that right now. Supposed to do that. Anyway, other than the fact that I forgot to rename this to main, let's now look at this. So, say we wanted to create a team object. So let's create a team object. Let's create something that's called a team object. Now this would take a few arguments. For example, we have a few things. Private final For example, let's try string custom name. But we're not going to set this to final. We're going to set this to public string custom name equals null. I'll explain what null is in a future tutorial. All you need to know is this basically means that there isn't actually a value here. And we're going to have a private final enum team color. You can have 10 teams, and they each have a different color. Team color. Let's try, you'd have like an array of, say, players. Wants me to set this value. It doesn't have a constructor. Anyway, so we can have a private final, and we could set player array. This is turning out to be a complex thing. Players. This is just an array of the players in this. Okay, here's the player class. It will have a team argument for which team the player's on. Also, when it does this thing, it by default does not put public there. I prefer to put public there. Anyway, so public player will have a private string name, private int ID. It's just an ID to identify the player, obviously. And it'll have a private team. This is whatever team the player is currently on. And these should all be final, but team should not be final. And then we go into our constructor, we go to public player, and we have our string name and our int ID in here. Apparently I misspelled string. It happens sometimes. It happens. So we go this dot name equals name. This dot ID equals ID. We're not initializing the team because we're going to do it. Oh man, that happened. Also, I just tapped F12 a bunch of times, so I gotta get in here. And yes, it did not screw with streaming because I know the hotkey for that is F12. Anyway, I meant to hit backspace, but F12 is right above the backspace, so that happens sometimes. Anyway, so we're going to do a public string get name. This is your normal get name function. Return name. I honestly don't know why I just make these public since they're final, but whatever. Public int get ID. And we're just going to return ID. But here's a fun one. We're going to do something. We're going to do public team get team. This tells me, when I select a player, which team they're on. Return team. And lastly, we're going to public void set team. And we're going to do this dot team equals team. Now that seems weird, but we're going to have an argument in here that says that basically is the new team that the player is being put on. So in here, this is the array of players that are on the team. I'm going to set it so that it has a maximum of 4. Now I'm going to set it so this equals new player array with a size of 4. Now in the constructor, I'm going to set them all to null. Null, by the way, is going to be something that gets explained a lot later. Public team, and this is the constructor for team. And here we go. Team. And all the argument it really needs is an enum team color. And we're going to do this dot team color equals color because that's what I've called it here. And then in here we're going to do public void set name. This basically allows us to set the custom name of this thing. So we're going to do this dot custom name equals name, and of course we're going to have a name argument in here, string name. This allows us to reset the name. Of course, we can do some things so it's not like you can have like a profanity filter on this method. If you go through that effort, you can have, now we're going to have public string get name. This just returns the name. Return this dot. That's also what you probably would do. And we're going to do public enum team color get color. Just returns the color of this. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm just doing. Return this dot team color. And lastly, public void add player return. Okay, no, we don't want that. Okay, so we want to go through this until we hit a null point. Now, actually, I'm going to set this to be a Boolean. Now, what this Boolean will mean is whether it successfully added the player to the team or not. For example, if it's full, that would return false because all the players are things. So we're going to do for int. Now, this is a fun one. Int I equals 0. I is less than 4 because it's always 4 in this. It can't be anything other than 4, so we don't need to do any fancy stuff. And if this dot players at index I equals null, only if that, this dot players I equals player, this is the player we're adding, and then we return true. We successfully added the player. Now, if it goes through the for loop, that means it didn't successfully add the player, so we return false. Okay, that's a good one. There's a bunch of other stuff besides enums I'm throwing in here to explain to you how this works. Then we can do now player, I'm going to add an extra thing. When it sets team, it also now in here we're also going to do a player.setTeam this. So the player becomes part of this team. And also in here, I'm going to add an extra argument in here for int index. Now what this means is that now we're going to do a private int team index, and by default this will equal -1. Why? -1 indicates that it's not on a team, is what I'm saying here. This dot team index equals index. And we're going to do public void reset team. And this basically, what it does is it does this dot team equals null. Again, I probably should explain what null is. Null is, what it is means that there isn't an object there. This variable does not point to an object. So if we were to take something that has null and try to do, say this was null, and we did team color, that would return an error because it doesn't have a team color. Null does not have a team color. Null is nothing. So this we need to do, and we put I there so it knows that's which one it is. This way we can do a public void, and this should always work. Well, actually, not necessarily. Boolean remove player, and we're going to have a player argument here, and this is saying to remove this specific player from here. Now, what we want to do is we want to check to make sure this is actually the player on this team, because yes, this could be a player on a different team, so it's ID. So first things first, if this is a player that isn't on a team, if player dot, we gotta set a method for checking this. Okay, public int get team index, return this dot team index. Basically, if player dot get team index is equal to -1, instantly, return false because this player isn't on a team. It returns false if the player wasn't actually on this team to be removed. And we're going to create a separate method, public void, because this would invoke if the player happened to be on the team. Public boolean, remove player, and this would accept an index thing. So so we're going to do an if statement. If this dot players, the player at this index equals, now, first things first, this will have a problem. So if index is less than 0 or index is greater than 3, because you know that if the max is 4, then the maximum index is 3 because you have 4 elements, and the first element is numbered 0, the fourth one will be numbered 3, so that's how that works. So if it's greater than 3, return false instantly because you know that it's got an invalid index, naturally. And if we go if this dot players index, we've already made sure that it's actually within the bounds, equals no, because I don't have the player, we have to do that in that one. So this dot players index equals null. That just happened somehow. Equals null. And then we got to return true. Return true. Okay. So now what we got to do is we got to, because this can be called int index without this being called, but this will also call this for reasons, because of reasons. So if player is not on team, we're going to do a way to, we're going to check this. I could do a method to check this, but I don't feel like it right now. Too complicated. Even, especially when this tutorial is supposed to be about enums, but I'm talking about this. We're going to get back to enums eventually. I just want to make sure this program actually makes sense. You know what I'm going for here. The enum, I just created the enum. See, this is how very not useful enums are. You instantly start getting to the more interesting stuff. You're like, it's an enum to explain one thing, and that's it. You got this enum, so you got a set of values that it can be one of those, and that's all. That's all we got. So, yeah. And if player is on this team, player dot get team equals this, because return this dot remove player dot get team index. And then lastly, if it wasn't on this team, well, return false. Now let's actually talk about enums again, and their literal one use. Switch statements. And with the enum I'm using, it's not even useful for switch statements. If you want to do switch statements with objects, you have to grab like a numerical ID from them. However, this case, let's create a random method. Private static void, I don't know, match method. We're not even doing anything. And I have an enum team color argument. And the idea behind this is you'd go through here, you'd put in your switch statement, and believe it or not, you can put color in here. It doesn't work with objects normally, a switch statement, but it works with enums because enums have a specific set of types, so it knows what it's working with. So case blue, you have your case blue, your case red. You have this another one for yellow. That should be a colon, not a semicolon. What's wrong with me? Case green, case orange, and so on. I'm just going to continue typing them because I'm OCD. Case purple. This is literally the one thing that enums are good for. That and making sure that no one can create extra values of color somehow. Like it's like if you're coding within a team of people, you could just be like, this enum team color is an enum. The things that exist in here are the only ones that can exist. You can't just make the program create new team colors. There are 10 set team colors, and that is that. That cannot be changed. That's kind of the point of it. You know? It's really nothing really big. Like, yeah. And also, since an enum can equal null, because it's an object, you also want to put in a default case. And you'd be just like system.err without that capital Y in there. System.err.println. Now, error means it's an error, which will display the text in red, actually, which is quite nice because then it stands out. It's like, this is an error, which the red text is done. Argument color. I'm going to put enum team color in brackets is null. We don't want it to be null. Or you can do like a custom behavior for null. Now this you can have like, oh, we do this with its blue and red. But really, in this situation, there isn't really customized behavior that you can do, like heavily customized behavior. There is something you do if it was if you were just messing with something else. If you're messing with, there are types of times where this is a thing you want to do with enums, where it's like you got custom, where it's like you've making a game where you got like spaces and it's got like tile types and you're using an enum for that, and it's like custom actions for some of them. Like some of them are like you can walk through them and some of them you can't walk through them, and you want to do custom actions with that. Then this makes sense. Doesn't make sense in this situation. Let's go back to the program at hand. So we're gonna create. Okay. So I'm going to create two things. We're going to create an array public static array. It will be a Boolean array. And it'll be teams enabled. We're actually going to make this final. So the way we'd name this is actually like this. Teams underscore enabled, because that's how you name something that's constant. Equals, and then we go in here, and then we create, say, new Boolean, and then there were 10, so it says 10 elements. This basically tells us which of the 10 teams are enabled. Now, that's why. Now, I just realized that giving these IDs actually is useful now because this can tell us if they're enabled. Later, those IDs would become unnecessary with something else I will teach you in the future, but I'm not teaching you this thing. So this is the best you can do with your current knowledge. So now the idea is that, now here's something fun you can do with the static keyword. You can just type static and curly bracket. And what this does is that anything that you do in here, so we're going to do for int I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus, and basically the idea is we're going to go over this entire teams enabled array and set it all to false, because by default no team is enabled. Now, teams enabled just means this team is enabled because there is at least one member in the team. which means that I'm going to have to do some behavior that determines if the team is enabled. So that's another thing that we want to do by initialize behavior. Now we're going to create each of the teams. We're going to do public static final team, and we're going to just create all of them. Blue, red. My typing skills are way off right now. Yellow, green, orange, purple. What was next? Black, white, silver, gold. The idea behind this is that these are all the things. Now it's like, error, what are you doing with these? These are not initialized. Don't worry. In here we just initialize them. In this. This is just for complicated initialization. So in here we could initialize them, or I could initialize them up here. I'm going to initialize them down here because why not? Actually, I'm going to initialize them up here. So equals new team enum team color dot blue. I'm also going to copy and paste this to each of them. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm also going to do that type thing. So it's like, it's okay with doing this because of the commas that exist there. It's okay with you doing that because there are commas there. It's weird. Java is a little bit confusing to me sometimes. It's okay with you doing that. It's not okay with you doing it right after the equals sign for some reason, but it's okay with you doing it right after these commas. It sees it all as the same statement because of the comma, I believe. It's weird. Anyway, now of course we're not all initializing with the color blue, so we're gonna go in here and we're just gonna reset the teams. That should actually be yellow. I don't know what I just did. My enter key sometimes does that. This should be orange. That should be purple. And this should be black. This should be white. This should be silver. And this should be gold. All right. Now, none of these teams are enabled, but as soon as a player is added, we set its thing to be enabled.